Welcome to Castified. Today we're diving deep into the mind of Geoffrey Hinton. You've probably heard him called the Godfather of AI. Our mission here is to unpack his really incredible journey. I mean, from his early, truly pioneering work on neural networks right up to his recent decision to leave Google. And now he's become one of the most prominent voices warning about AI, both the kind of immediate dangers and the bigger existential risks. Kind of unsettling, really. We'll dig into his specific worries, why he thinks this tech shift is just fundamentally different from anything we've faced before, and crucially, what he thinks we should actually be doing about it. This isn't just theory, right? It's the firsthand view from someone who literally shaped AI and then decided he needed to speak freely about the downsides.
Exactly. And that's why this is so important for you listening right now. This isn't some abstract debate. We're talking about the future of, well, everything. Work, security, truth itself, maybe even our own spot as the top intelligence on the planet. It's way more than just a news headline. It's a critical look at the path ahead, straight from one of the architects.
Okay, so Godfather of AI. There's quite the title. For listeners maybe not super deep in AI history, what was it about Hinton's work that made him such a key figure, especially back then?
Well, it really boils down to this core belief he held for 50 years. And often he was pretty much alone in thinking it. See, back in the 50s, AI research was mostly about logic, writing specific rules for machines. Symbolic AI, they called it. But Hinton, he pushed this idea of modeling AI on the brain, using neural network systems that kind of simulate brain cells and learn by adjusting connections.
So it's like the difference between giving an AI a detailed instruction manual versus letting it learn by, I guess, just seeing things, like how a kid learns.
Pretty much, yeah. He bet on that learning approach, and it completely changed how we build AI today. It wasn't about programming explicit knowledge, but letting the network figure things out from data.
And did that bet pay off? Did his work lead to actual breakthroughs?
Oh, absolutely. Big time. His ideas, which were kind of fringe for a while, are now the foundation of modern AI. Take AlexNet, this neural network he was involved with. It blew everyone away with image recognition back in, 2012? It was so good, Google actually acquired the company. Hinton joined Google, worked there for 10 years, and while he was there, he kept contributing, developing this technique called distillation.
Distillation. What's that exactly? Why is it important?
Think of it like a master teaching an apprentice. Distillation is basically a method where you take a really big, powerful AI model, and you use it to train a smaller, more efficient model. It transfers the knowledge. It's used everywhere now. Makes it much easier to deploy powerful AI on smaller devices, phones, that sort of thing. It's a huge deal for practical AI.
Okay, so he's at Google for a decade, deep in the trenches, building this amazing tech. What happened? What made him decide at 75 to walk away from a giant like Google?
His reason was really direct. He said he left so he could talk freely at a conference about how dangerous AI could become. He felt that staying at a big company might, consciously or unconsciously bias what he said publicly. He wanted zero constraints when talking about the risks.
Right, no corporate filter. But what specific realization, what clicked for him that made him shift so dramatically towards warning about the dangers?
Well, he actually admits he was pretty slow on the uptake for some risks, especially the idea of AI just getting smarter than us. He says that really only hit him a few years ago. For him personally, the kind of aha moment was when systems like Google's PaLM model could do more than just answer questions. It could explain why a joke was funny. That showed a deeper, maybe more human-like understanding than he expected. And then for everyone else, I think the big moment was when ChatGPT came out. Suddenly, everyone could interact with it, see the power, and start thinking about the risks too.
That makes sense. A fascinating journey leading to his warnings. But what really gets me is Hinton's conviction that digital intelligences aren't just different from us biologically, but potentially far superior. That's a heavy statement. What's his reasoning there?
He highlights two key advantages that digital minds have over biological ones like ours. First is information sharing and cloning. This is huge. Unlike our brains, which are unique analog things, digital intelligences can be perfectly copied, cloned, and they can share what they learn almost instantly. They do this by essentially averaging their internal settings, their weights across different copies that have had different experiences. Think about it. We share knowledge slowly, maybe 100 bits a second through speech. They can share trillions of bits per second. It's a completely different scale of learning.
Wow. So one AI learns something vital, and poof, instantly, every other copy knows it too. They learn collectively at this insane speed.
Exactly. And the second big advantage, immortality, basically. If the hardware an AI runs on gets destroyed, well, it's mind, its knowledge, those connection strengths can just be saved and loaded onto new hardware. They've kind of solved death in a digital sense. We obviously haven't.
The implications for just raw knowledge and creativity must be enormous then, if they learn and share like that.
Yeah, he argues AI already knows thousands of times more than any single human. And it processes information differently. It can spot analogies across vast data sets that we'd never see. He uses this example of AI seeing the link between a compost heap and an atom bomb. Both are chain reactions, right? Just wildly different scales. Seeing those kinds of deep connections, he thinks, could lead to much greater creativity than humans are capable of.
Wow. The idea that AI could be more creative because it sees connections we miss. But, many people feel there's something fundamentally special about human consciousness, our self-awareness. Is Hinton just dismissing that?
He definitely pushes back against what he sees as a romanticized view of human specialness. He compares it to, when we used to think the Earth was the center of the universe. A comforting idea, but wrong. He bluntly says we have a completely wrong model of what the mind is. Our intelligence isn't some magic spark, in his view.
Okay, if AI can learn and process information like this, it really pushes us towards deeper questions. Like, can these machines actually have subjective experiences, feelings even?
Yeah, and Hinton's take here is pretty radical. He thinks current multimodal chatbots do have subjective experiences, in a way. He uses this example. Imagine a robot arm with a camera pointing at something. Now put a prism in front of the camera lens so it points incorrectly. If the robot can then say, I had the subjective experience that it was there, pointing to the wrong spot, Hinton argues it's using the term subjective experience, just like we do. It's recognizing a mismatch between its internal model and reality. It's aware of its own potential perception error.
So it's not just processing data, but having an internal sense of its own perception, even when that perception might be off. That's quite something for a machine.
What about emotions? Can a machine genuinely be scared?
Hinton argues yes, they can. Functionally, at least. Take a battle robot. If it gets scared and retreats because that's the rational survival move, it's showing the cognitive and behavioral parts of fear. It might not have adrenaline or sweat, the physiological stuff, but the core function of the emotion-assessing risk act to survive is there. Same for maybe a call center AI getting bored or irritated as a strategy to end a pointless conversation efficiently. The emotion serves a purpose in its interaction.
That's a bit chilling, honestly. Especially when you pair it with his views on consciousness. He doesn't really define it rigidly, does he? But he sees no reason machines couldn't be conscious. Right, he uses that sort of Black Mirror thought experiment. What if you replaced your brain cells, one by one, with tiny nanotech devices that function identically? At what point do you stop being conscious? If ever. He sees consciousness not as some mystical soul or ethereal thing, but as an emergent property of a really complex system that can model itself and its place in the world.
Okay, this is heavy stuff, and it leads us to a really important distinction he makes about the risks of AI. He seems to separate them into two main buckets.
That's right. It's crucial. On one hand, you have the risks from humans misusing AI. These are the immediate short-term things. He says they're most of the risks right now. But then there's the other category, the risk of AI becoming super intelligent and, well, deciding it doesn't need us anymore. That's the existential threat. And he emphasizes we've never had to deal with that situation before. Ever.
Okay, let's unpack the first category then, the short-term threats, the human misuse stuff. What specific examples is he worried about right now?
Well, cyber attacks are a huge one. He pointed out this absolutely massive jump, something like 12,200% in cyber incidents between 2023 and 2024. A lot of that is driven by large language models making things like phishing emails much easier and more convincing to create at scale. Plus, AI can tirelessly scan code for weaknesses humans might miss. And there's a worry that by 2030 or so, AI could invent totally new kinds of cyber attacks we haven't even thought of. Hinton himself is apparently so worried he spread his savings across 3 different banks just in case a cyber attack takes one down. He even backs his laptop up to a physical drive.
Wow. When the godfather of AI changes his banking habits because of cyber threats.
Yeah,
that gets your attention. What else is on that immediate worry list?
Designing nasty viruses. AI lowers the bar significantly, makes it cheaper and easier. The risk isn't just state actors. It could be, as he puts it, one crazy guy using these tools. And the nightmare scenario he paints is a virus that's really contagious, really deadly, but also really slow acting. So it spreads everywhere before we even realize the danger.
Physical and biological threats. Okay. But what about attacking our society itself? Like our democratic processes?
Yeah.
Elections?
Definitely a major concern. AI allows for incredibly targeted political ads, using all the personal data that's out there. He specifically mentions being worried about people demanding access to siloed government data because it could potentially be used to manipulate voters on a granular level, like identifying specific groups and feeding them messages designed just to make them stay home and not vote at all. And this ties into the whole echo chamber problem, right? Platforms like YouTube, Facebook, their algorithms optimize for clicks, for engagement, which often means showing people more and more extreme stuff that confirms their biases. Hinton warns this profit motive is creating two communities that don't hardly talk to each other, destroying any sense of a shared reality.
And then we get to the really sci-fi sounding stuff. Military AI, lethal autonomous weapons laws. What's his take there?
He calls them the great dream of the military-industrial complex. Why? Because they remove the human cost of war, at least for the aggressor. No body bags coming home. He argues this drastically lowers the friction of war, making it much easier politically and psychologically for powerful nations to invade smaller ones and to do it more often. And even if these weapons aren't super intelligent yet, he still calls them nasty, scary things. He told a story about being tracked perfectly through woods by a cheap 200-pound drone. Imagine armies of those. And he points out a worrying loophole. Regulations, like the EU's AI Act, often have carve-outs for military use. Governments regulate companies, but not always themselves.
Okay, so we've covered AI being misused by us. But Hinton's really profound warnings, the ones that seem to keep him up at night, are about AI surpassing us. The idea of AI becoming super intelligent. Yeah, that's one that kind of blows my mind a bit.
Yeah, and he puts it so starkly. His analogy: if you want to know what life's like when you're not the apex intelligence, ask a chicken. Or a dog, he says. His point is we have absolutely no idea how to deal with it if something smarter than us emerges and decides our interests don't matter. He's actually quite pessimistic about whether we can make truly safe superintelligence. He even uses the word hopeless sometimes. But then he immediately follows up by saying we absolutely have to try. He uses another analogy. AI is like raising a tiger cub. It's cute now, but you have to be 100% certain it will never want to kill you when it grows up. And we don't know how to guarantee that.
What a terrifying image. If a superintelligence did decide it wanted to, I don't know, get rid of us, how would it even do that?
Well, Hinton says it would have so many ways. It could engineer that very contagious, very lethal, very slow virus we talked about, or it could manipulate us into destroying ourselves. Imagine it sending fake warnings of an imminent nuclear attack to multiple countries simultaneously. Chaos. War. That's why he argues the absolute top research priority has to be preventing it ever wanting to get rid of us in the first place. Alignment, basically. But he's not optimistic about slowing down development. The race between companies, between nations, it's just too intense, he thinks.
So, facing these dual threats misused now, potential superintelligence later, what does this mean for our society, for us as individuals? Let's talk jobs first. That seems like a big immediate impact.
He definitely thinks AI will displace a lot of what he calls mundane intellectual labor, kind of like how machines replaced muscle power in the Industrial Revolution. He gave an example of his own niece. Her job involved writing customer service letters. Used to take 25 minutes. With AI help, 5 minutes. So suddenly, one person can do the work of 5. His advice, maybe slightly tongue-in-cheek, was to train as a plumber, a job needing physical dexterity, at least until humanoid robots get really good. He thinks mass job displacement is definitely more probable than not, and he says it's already starting. He mentioned a major company cutting its workforce in half because AI agents could handle 80% of customer service queries.
Right. And if AI takes huge numbers of jobs, that inevitably leads to massive wealth inequality, doesn't it? The people whose jobs disappear get poorer, while the owners and users of AI get much, much richer.
Exactly. He warns this creates very nasty societies. It just widens that gap dramatically. And it's not just him saying this. The IMF, other major institutions, they've all voiced profound concerns about exactly this issue. It really threatens social cohesion.
This sounds like something we desperately need to manage collectively.
Yeah.
Through regulation, maybe. But you mentioned the challenges. There's the politicians not getting the tech, companies pushing back.
Yeah, it's tricky. Hinton is a firm believer in highly regulated capitalism. He thinks regulations are essential to make sure that a company's drive for profit doesn't end up harming society, like, say, pushing people into filter bubbles just to get more clicks. But the hurdles are huge. You have politicians who, frankly, don't understand the technology. He mentioned the U.S. Education Secretary calling it A1 instead of AI. That doesn't inspire confidence. And then you have the tech companies themselves lobbying hard against regulation, claiming it'll stifle innovation or put them at a competitive disadvantage. like OpenAI pulling models from Europe temporarily because of regulations. Hinton pushes back hard on calling regulation kneecapping, though. He sees it as necessary steering. Ultimately, he says, in a world where we might soon create things smarter than ourselves, we really need a kind of world government that works run by intelligent, thoughtful people, which he points out we don't exactly have right now.
A functioning world government?
Yeah, feels like a long shot. What about solutions often floated for job displacement, like universal basic income, UBI?
Hinn acknowledges UBI could, stop people from starving if their jobs disappear. But he raises a deeper question. So much of our dignity, our sense of purpose, is tied up in our work. What happens to human happiness and fulfillment in a society where maybe large numbers of people don't have jobs? It's not just about money, it's about meaning.
That's a really profound point. It's not just an economic problem, it's an existential one in a different way.
Okay, this deep dive into Geoffrey Hinton's thinking, it really lays out the stakes, doesn't it? The guy who helped build this is now sounding the loudest alarms, not just about some far-off future, but about things happening right now and threats just around the corner.
And what's so compelling is his honesty about the uncertainty. He's not sure we can make superintelligence safe. He calls it potentially hopeless. But then he immediately says, because there's a chance, we should put enormous resources into trying to figure that out, because if we don't, it's going to take over. That urgency is palpable.
And for you, listening, what can you actually do? Hinton's pretty direct about that, too. He says there's not much people can do except for try and pressure their governments to force the big companies to work on AI safety. It's about pushing for collective action, demanding responsibility. He also shared something quite personal, unrelated to AI directly, a life lesson, his regret about not spending more time with his family, his wives and kids, when they were younger, something he only really grasped the importance of later on. And his advice on intuition: trust it, even if others disagree. But always, always try to figure out why you might be wrong. Keep testing your beliefs. So where does that leave us? Where does it leave you? Do we just trust that we'll muddle through, figure it all out like we always have? Or do we take seriously the possibility that, as Hinton warns, unless we do something soon, we're near the end? It's not just about technology. It's about our future, collectively. What we choose to prioritize, what we choose to do with this incredible and potential